Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're glad to have you back again this week for another Small Business Answer Man podcast. I wished I had all the answers, but I don't. But you know what I do know how to do? I know to get people on the podcast that can answer some of those tough questions. And I've been sharing with you in the second and third quarter this concept I've come up with of the 6P business owner formula. And that's in people, pricing, productivity, profit, and processes, and also promotion, which promotion is all about marketing. And we're going to talk in that promotion area today with Anthony. But Anthony, will you share with our listeners, what problem will you help them solve?
Well, I help companies get more website traffic and build their social media followings and eventually turn that audience into customers. That's the problem I'm going to help them solve.
Now, that's excellent, because I know we have people that's listening today that have that challenge for their website and their social media and really where they need to go. And Anthony Butler is the founder of digital marketing agency Can Do Ideals. He's the author of Primal Storytelling, Marketing for Humans. He is the highly regarded expert in brand storytelling and digital marketing. Anthony graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point and in the U.S. Army Ranger School. He is a combat veteran and commanded an infantry company in Iraq during the invasion of Baghdad. He is also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blackbelt, and he currently resides in Montana with his wife and two sons. First off, Anthony, let me tell you, thank you for your service. I'm a believer in, I've never served, but I have great appreciation for people that have served. So thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, I'm curious to get into this because marketing, social media, for a lot of business owners, this becomes, to be quite honest, kind of their Achilles heel. Because how do I do it all? How do I make it work? You know, there's so many opportunities, different ways to get out there. So let's kind of start from more of what I would call a basic question and build up from there. What do you think is the number one mistake you see businesses making with kind of social media and marketing today?
Well, I think the big problem I see with businesses is that they do what I call random acts of marketing. You know, they're trying to be part of this ephemeral online conversation. So they're posting on Twitter because they think they got to be on Twitter. They're posting on Instagram because they think they need to be on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever channel they think they're going after. And they just don't have a strategic plan. They don't have a business process to create content, to take part in social media in a way that is measurable and in a way that converts so that investment equals growth. Okay. You know, and I come from a sales background. And when I moved over from the dark side of sales to marketing, you know, I came in with a leads mindset. You know, I want to grow business. And how I even got started was got out of the Army. I worked a sales job, and eventually I got recruited to go to a startup in New York City. And I got there and I was like employee number 57. And when I left, there was a 9-figure exit. And I was one of their top salespeople in the whole world. And I'd helped with the messaging. I'd helped get leads. And I understood as like, you know, in a VC environment with a startup, you know, growth at any cost, right? Like anything to grow. But then when you get into small businesses that, you know, maybe they've been in business 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and they've got a base, they've got clients and they're profitable, but they're faced with this puzzle. It's like, what do I do with my online presence? Like, how do I get leads from that? How do I grow from that? And, you know, it's getting harder and harder. If you went on YouTube right now and you watched 24 hours a day for 60 plus years, like you're not going to consume all the content that's going to be uploaded on YouTube in just 1 hour. Okay. There's 1.5 billion websites in the world. So get noticed, to get something from your investment, it takes a real plan. It's just not random. You've got to actually have a good strategy and a business process for it.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's one of our first challenges is people really don't have a strategic plan, especially small business entrepreneurs, because normally they're not just doing the marketing side of the business, they're also doing the sales, and they're doing probably some of the administration side. So I think maybe the question I would have is kind of, as we're looking at that, how can we really, kind of playing off your book that you have, and you've very graciously sent me a copy of, is harnessing those primal human emotions. What's those urges that will help get new customers, to get people thinking in that manner?
So emotions are felt in what we think of as a gradient. So rarely do you just feel one emotion at a time. So you get in a car accident, right? And you come out of it and you're not hurt. Well, your car got smashed. You're upset about that, but you're happy that you didn't get hurt. You're happy that no one else got hurt. You're happy you got insurance, right? And then you're like, oh my gosh, now I got to go through this whole process and I got to get a new car. And there's just mix of emotions, and life is like that, right? What marketers have to do is think about the mix of emotion that is involved in their sales process, and then bring that into their marketing. So one of the questions I'm always asking is, why would they not buy from you? What are they scared of? And a lot of times, if you're doing consulting, or maybe you got an office service type business, it's trust first, right? You got to trust someone before you're going to give them any money. You want to work with someone that you like. Okay. In local businesses that start out with just word of mouth. Okay. When they move online, one of the first, I think the big struggle that they have is, oh, everyone knows me. I don't have to build trust online. People know me, right? I live in a small town. What I can tell you is I live in a really small town. I live in Helena, Montana. It's a city of 35,000 people surrounded by what? Wilderness. And I've been here pretty much my whole life, off and on. And I could tell you, not everyone knows who I am. And so if I build a website for a small town, we start with building trust. We start with telling stories that help us connect with the audience, because that's the first step in any kind of a sales process, especially online, right? You got to put your best foot forward.
Yeah, I love that. And that really kind of sets it up of, really, can you share with us you kind of started that process of, where did the idea of kind of primal storytelling come from, and kind of how you kind of developed that, and then you ended up taking it into the book, which I'm sure you're putting in your marketing plan that's there. But how did that concept where did that come from?
So I left the startup, and after the startup, I was hired by this big IT company to come over, and they wanted me to build the sales and marketing departments for them. I did that. A couple of years in, their board appointed me CEO. I worked with them for a few years. The company sold, and I moved on, and I founded this company. Okay. And how I started was, I went to clients that I'd already worked with on the other side, and I brought some of them over, and I was like, hey, you trusted me here, trust me with your marketing. And that worked out really well. And the first couple of years, we did 6 figures in the first 6 months. And so first 2 years, we did really, really well. And then one day, the tsunami hit. I got a call from a CEO, and at this IT company, in a business I was supposed to be an expert in a niche that I was like super comfortable. And he's like, Tony, listen, the work is good. We like you guys. You're on time. Like everything is fine. He's like, but it's just not moving the needle. So we're going to go in a different direction. We got fired. And, an agency that doesn't get results, I mean, that's a sinking ship. You're not long for this world, right? And there's a graveyard just full of all the agencies that didn't get results. Right. So I knew that was the shot across the bow. And I asked the question, I was like, why did it not work for this client But for all these other clients, they're happy. Like, what was different? Because he was right. He wasn't, he wasn't telling me some big story. I went and I looked at all their data. I looked at all their analytics and everything that we'd done for them. I was like, man, he's right. It's not working. And at first, I couldn't put my finger on it. I just couldn't tell what was the difference. Then I end up going to a conference down in San Diego with this guy. And, a couple days in, he's up on stage and he's talking about marketing. And he says, people buy emotionally and then they justify with logic. And in sales, that's something, right? It's just this common, it's almost a cliche. And I'd heard it before. But then I hear him say it up on that stage, and I'm like, okay, well, what emotions? What emotions make people buy? Like, why? Why do they not buy? And then I was like, what does the science say? And I started going through and looking at all these studies about emotions. And that's when I stumbled on this idea called evolutionary psychology. It's like this kind of an esoteric study into, what makes us human. And how does that affect our behavior in modern day times? And like one of the shocking things for me that all the science is saying is that, our technology has changed so fast, just wow. In a couple of generations, we went from, the same technology they had during Roman times to, we're on Mars, right. And Elon Musk is like trying to put a plant, people to live on Mars, to have our own civilization on Mars. Okay. My great grandfather, Charles Butler, was born at home in a house made of earth and wood in 1898. Okay. In just his lifetime, he went from nothing to the space shuttle. Like, he remembers when indoor plumbing wasn't a thing. It was like that kind of a change in one lifetime. But here's the thing. Our technology changed, but we as human beings did not change. And the idea behind evolutionary psychology is that humans have not changed in tens of thousands of years, because it just takes a really long time if you understand like how we adapt, and that the communication has. And storytelling was invented before the invention of fire. Okay. It was probably, it's something that's inherent to our nature. If you've ever been around kids, what do kids do? They live in stories. When my kids were little, we watched Shrek like 16,000 times. I don't know if you know that show.
Oh, yes.
Because it had just come out on video. My oldest son saw it, and that's all he wanted to watch forever, because it's an amazing story. It's got great music, good characters, and he was obsessed with that story. And that is something that we have that in every culture. Every kid gets obsessed with stories at some point in time. When you think back, like Little Red Riding Hood, okay? This is a story that almost everyone knows in Western culture. But did you know that Little Red Riding Hood is one of the oldest stories in history? Anthropologists have traced it back. More likely than not, it predates the Bible. They found more than 60 versions of it all over the world in different cultures. It's just this ancient story. But you ask yourself, how did it last the test of time? Like, how did it last, for thousands and thousands of years? It lasted because it's a structure that speaks to our heart. It touches us. It's this little girl who goes into the woods. And what do we know about the woods? There's monsters. And the monsters, they don't all look like wolves. They might be people. And that's a story that rings with everyone. If you look at like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, they're all the exact same story, the exact same structure. I mean, exactly down, beat by beat by beat, from beginning to end. Okay. And so I took these ideas and I said, okay, if I'm going to help a small business, how do I take story structures and what we know about psychology and emotions and primal urges and put it into a business system that's going to get someone results? And I was always a blue collar guy. I was in the infantry in the Army. I'm not super smart. And so I was just like, okay, I just need a checklist. I need like a way I can put this in to implement it. And so I made the book out so that you just start at the beginning, you follow exactly along, exactly what I'm telling you, pick and choose, customize the parts for your business, and then start telling the 4 core stories that I outlined. And if you just start with those stories, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get more leads. People are going to start trusting you. You're going to get a lot more business. Your social media accounts will explode. But when I start applying this to myself, like I use LinkedIn. I went from like 800 LinkedIn users to 8,000 in a very, very short amount of time. Okay. And I didn't do anything incredible, but I mixed in some stories about myself, some stories about my business, and some connections that are very human. Okay. One mistake I think a lot of B2B businesses make is they think, oh, we're B2B, so we got to be very formal. We got to be, we got to be corporate. But nothing's farther from the case, because you know what? There's never a company out there that bought a single thing. There's a person, a group of people within that company that made a decision, and you know what? They're people. Okay, ChatGPT hasn't taken over buying yet. it's still
right.
people. So
that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. And we're going to get a little bit deeper in that, but you're listening to the Small Business Answer Man podcast. We will be right back. Now back to the show. Well, thanks for sharing that. I think that really sets up a question that I think probably people are asking, and I'm asking it. So since I'm the host, I get to answer those questions. But a lot of people are talking about story today and marketing. But I think for a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs, we're confused on what you really want in that area. So share with us kind of what you believe in that area and kind of what you framed up with Primal Storytelling and how that's different.
Yeah, so we're not talking about writing the great American novel. I'm not asking you to be Hemingway. That's not what this is. What I'm telling you is there's 3 primary stories that you're going to use to create a foundation for your website and your social media. So the first one is an origin story. Where did you come from? Why are you doing what you're doing? Okay. Now why do we do that one? If you look at people's natural conversations, is that one of the questions that we always ask them is, hey, where are you from? Actually, before we started today, you asked me, hey, where are you at? And I'm like, oh, I'm in Helena, Montana. Like, oh, how did you get there? It's something that we naturally ask people. Okay, because it's a connection to where we're from. Okay, and we start with that origin story. It's very interesting. If you look at superhero movies like the Marvel Universe, the origin stories of the superheroes, those are some of the best performing movies that they ever made. And you get into movie 3 and 4 and like, yeah, they don't do nearly as well as that origin story movie. Okay, so that's the first story that you're going to put together. It doesn't have to be really long. It can be a couple of paragraphs. It can be, how you got started. I just did one for a construction company. Really interesting company in Montana. This owner, he started out, he just graduated from high school, and he invested like $700 and he bought a snowplow for the front of his truck. And about 10 years later, he's got 30 employees. He's doing millions. Okay. Really great story, and obviously we flushed it out with some of the struggles he'd had along the way and, where he was at. But then we transition into what's called the vision story. What is it you're trying to bring to the world with your business? And business owners solve problems. That's what we do. We sell things that people need because they need it for their own reasons. If you're a consultant or you're in any kind of a service business, we do exactly that. We serve. Okay. And so that vision statement, that vision story, it helps people connect with the bigger part of your business and what you're really trying to accomplish. It's an important piece. And I can tell you, lots of people will connect with you just by the vision. Okay. And then the third story is the transformation stories. And those are those case studies that you write. Like how did people work with you? What was it like before they met you? What was it like afterwards? What were the results that they got? The entire fitness industry is by before and after pictures, okay? It's a very powerful visual because every company that you're going to meet, they want to know, did you produce results? And then they're going to say, did you produce results for somebody just like me? I gotta get people to say, hey, Tony, storytelling. Have you ever worked with, and I had one real, I'm a point of sale seller. We sell, credit card processing. You ever done one of those? I'm like, well, people process payments. It's like, why is it different? It's exactly the same. I've done software. And why is it different? Because everyone thinks that their business is special, that their business is just so different that this will never work exactly for them. Primal storytelling has been implemented in dozens of businesses, B2B, B2C, e-commerce, you name it. I don't think there's a business that I've discovered yet that can't use storytelling in some way. Okay, so use those transformation stories. And then the fourth storyline, and I want you to think of this like your favorite TV show. Okay, so you have a season. Maybe you have 5 seasons of a show. Each season has a theme. It has like something underlying it, what's going on in that whole season. Okay. And then each episode is a story unto itself. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And in some way, it advances the plot of the overall story. Okay. So like the theme for primal storytelling is, I'm trying to help small business owners do better online. I'm trying to help them use storytelling in their marketing. I'm trying to help transform websites from being brochures to lead generation machines. Like that's what I do. Okay. Well, I can't talk about that in every email. I can't talk about that on every post. Like no one wants, it's like paint drying. Like no one cares that much about it. But what they'll hear a little bit, they'll hear a clip here, they'll hear a clip there. I did a post a couple of years ago about my son. So this crazy post I posted on LinkedIn was my son was on a swim team. He was in high school, and it was summer, and he was I guess they do long distance during the summertime swimming, and they had 7 a.m. practice. So he had to get up at 6:15 so he could get ready and go to this practice. And I go and I wake him up, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going today. Like, what do you mean you're not going? No, I'm too tired. I'm not going to swim. I was like, you're going. You need to get out of bed. And so I had this like little fight with my son. And at the end of it, I made him go to his practice. And he says, I hate you. So I go on LinkedIn, and this was one of my few unplanned posts. And I post on there, I was like, hey, my son told me he hated me today. That I'm okay with that because I'm a dad and my job is to make him do what he's supposed to do. And I said a few more things, and that post went nuts. I mean, thousands of people liked it, shared it, commented on it, because I think it rang with a lot of fathers out there that got difficult teenage kids, 15 and know everything. And, if you can emphasize, send me a message. He's 16 now, and I'm teaching him how to drive, so it's even worse. But my point is, you definitely have a story you can tell because you're a human being. And the human side of your business is how you're going to help grow the business. If you look at, like, I keep bringing up LinkedIn because I think it's the largest business networking site, business social media. Most LinkedIn company pages fail. Like no one really follows those because they're not interesting to anyone. No one really wants to follow some big faceless brand, but they'll follow Gary. Like we're going to follow what's Gary doing in his life? What's his family doing? What vacation is he going on? What car did you buy? Like what are you doing in your life? I do really long distance backcountry hiking up in Montana. And so later this year, we're going up to the Bob Marshall Wilderness, and it's a grizzly bear habitat, and it can be dangerous. And I've done some backcountry hikes before, and had some encounters. And so we carry bear spray, and I carry a gun and a rifle, and people are interested in that. And so I'll post a little bit about that. I'll sprinkle those things into my marketing. I own a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, which has nothing to do with marketing, and I sprinkle in stories about my students and things that happened in my business in jiu-jitsu, and it's really hard and it's kind of fighting, and people are interested in it. A few times, one time I got a giant black eye in jiu-jitsu. I mean, my eye was like just massive, black and swollen. And so I just kept doing business. I shot videos with this big black eye so I could tell people, yeah, I caught a headbutt from a white belt, and shame on me. And people always want to hear that story, and it helped me connect with them. Okay, because it's a human story, and it's something that people are interested in, and it's more than just marketing. Okay, marketing is about 10% of my life, and the other 90% of my life is way more interesting than the 10% that I'm actually an expert in. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, definitely makes sense. And I think the key is really getting the business owners. I like what you shared there is it doesn't have to be unique. To be quite honest, it's your origin story. It's your vision. It's your transformation story. And in those seasons of life that's there with your business, really sharing that, but then also letting them see a peek into the personal side, because small business owners and entrepreneurs, that's what they want. They're supporting that kind of what you are and what you're making in that part of it. We're a big company. That's your distinguishing factor.
Yep.
A big company can't do that. A corporate type company that has thousands and thousands of employees will never be able to do that. But if you look at it, they always try to brand themselves as something, but a small business owner can brand themselves completely by their stories.
Well, if you look at all this controversy right now around Bud Light, let's use this as an example.
Yeah.
Okay. And it doesn't matter what side of that political spectrum you fall on. I want to skip that part of it. And you just look at what they did. They told a story that their core audience hated. The marketing manager, she did not know who her tribe was at all. She didn't understand her audience. She didn't care about them. She was insulting them in podcasts after this happened. She's like defending what she did. Like, you know what? Bud's down $5 billion. Okay, because they told a story that people absolutely did not like. It did not speak to their client, and then they showed disdain for their own clients. Like that's not a way. Like, if you hate the people you're trying to do business with, you're probably not going to do business with them. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And I just read an article this morning on it, and just at the top of the head is what I want to tell you is like, their sales are down 26% year over year. That's a crisis, and it was self-inflicted by a single story. And it just shows the power. What if they flipped that around? What if they told a story their core market actually cared about? And I could think of 1,000 different ways they could have turned that around. But they just had the wrong leadership team with the wrong idea, trying to do the wrong things. I just think the first part of the primal storytelling formula, okay, it's 3 parts. It's tribe plus primal urges and emotions plus story. Okay. And that first part, the tribal part, is you have to understand who you're working with. And I love, just before we started, you're talking about like who you are working with. You're for small businesses. You're not for giant companies. You're not for Fortune 500. You're not for little micro mom and pops. Like, you're for small businesses. Okay. That is a distinct audience. Now, you could even niche it down farther if you wanted to. You could say, and I did a podcast that was only for e-commerce, for a set of guys. They had some software that's for e-commerce, and they had a podcast. It's for e-commerce entrepreneurs, a very small niche, but they had a couple of thousand people a month that are downloading their podcast. It's just for that. And I think when you niche down who you serve, and then you understand them like they're a member of your family, like they're a close friend, that makes your marketing easier. It helps you avoid telling the kinds of stories that they don't care about, right? Exactly. Like think about iconic brands. Think about Harley Davidson, for instance. Harley Davidson has been around a long, long time. Harley Davidson knows who their audience is, and they know who it's not. And guess what? They have not made the Bud Light mistake. Okay. If you look at all their marketing, go back 25 years, people are getting tattoos of Harleys on them. That's how much people love that brand, right? Is that they know who their audience is. They let their audience tell a lot of their story, and they support that story with everything that they do. They're one of the greatest marketing companies out there, but I think the genius of them is they know exactly who their market is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Anthony, it's some great information, and I appreciate you sharing it, because I think I hope what's happening is business owners are now thinking, them small business owners, how can I use this in my company? And really it comes back to those 3 primal stories you talked about. What's your origin story? What's your vision story? What's your transformation? And then follow it up that you can create seasons of the show for yourself. I mean, I look at, when you said that, I talked about my 6P business owner formula. I'm sharing right now in the second and third quarter really about those 6 Ps, and having guests on that talk about each one of those. So I know you said that you would be willing to give our guest, and I appreciate this so much, a free digital copy of your book, along with 7 bonuses that's there. And I think they can go right to your website. Is that right? primalstorytelling.com/podcast to be able to get that?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go on there, you get a copy of the book. And then the bonuses, it's 7 videos that I made to help you implement quickly and then apply it to some different scenarios. And I know it can be overwhelming. You like see this new business system and you're trying to implement it yourself, or maybe you got one person on your team. And so I just wanted to make it easy. So that's why that's there.
Well, I appreciate you doing that, and check out his website too and his information, but get yourself that digital copy of them 7 videos, because just start with one of them and start implementing and really talking to your customers, because marketing doesn't have to be confusing. And then if you're needing somebody to help you with that, check out their website. And that's what Anthony and his team does. And you've got a resource that's available to you and stuff. And he's also on LinkedIn. He's talked about many times, and he's also on Instagram. We'll have all that in show notes that they can get to it. But to get that free digital copy of the book and the 7 bonuses, again, primalstorytelling.com/podcast. And you're going to get that free. I appreciate you so much for offering that. And he even sent me a copy of his book. Haven't got through it yet, but it's one that's on my next read that's available. And I'm going to definitely be checking it out. And I'll send you, when I get completed with it, what I really enjoy about it. But I love the concept, because we got to do a better job in storytelling in each one of those areas. Anthony, before we wrap up, I would like you to share, you probably shared some of it already through the podcast, but I always ask guests this final question is, what's your best business advice or tip that you would give business owners?
So understand who your audience is, and then have a strategic marketing plan for the whole year. And you should have most of that plan sketched out, really planned out for the whole year or in advance, and definitely 90 days in advance, where you're creating that content so that it really can connect to everything that you're doing in your business, and you can move the needle, and it's not, we don't want to think about marketing like Vegas. Like, we want to know we're getting a return, right? So.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. And I can't thank you enough for joining us today. Thanks for joining us, Anthony.
Well, thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Remember, it's primalstorytelling.com/podcast to be able to get his ebook of the book and the 7 bonuses that's available to you. I always give an action at the very end. My action is going to be twofold this time. I'm going to give you a stop and a start. The stop at the very beginning, Anthony told us, stop doing random acts of marketing. And if you listen to the podcast, you know what we mean by that. So I won't delve deeper in that. My second one is, I would give you the strategy of what he just shared with us. Set up a strategic plan of what you plan to do. If you're going to post only once a week or 3 times a week, set that plan in place. And if you think that's too hard, just look at the calendar, look 90 days, get 90 days done, and then do the next 90 days. And all you have to do is follow some trends. There's holidays and there's vacations and there's different things. Just follow some of them trends out there, or follow the trends that's in your business, and then decide to post something up and be strategic about it. And make sure you're really working to your tribe, the people that you will be listening to you. Make it targeted to them. If you all remember, my podcast used to be Main Charge. That was create habits around real goals every day. It's a theme that I like. But I realized myself, I wasn't talking to my audience. And that's why I changed the Small Business Answer Man. And there's a reason for that. I want people to know that this podcast is for business owners and entrepreneurs to come listen to. So if you like the podcast, please like it and share it. Let others know. We'll be back next week with another great guest. Please join us. Make it a great day. Thanks for joining us.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.